First, my name is Tom Rady. I'm a South Boston resident. I live in the Fort Point neighborhood. And I think that's an important thing to say because everybody in this room is a South Boston resident, regardless of which neighborhood we happen to live in. Right? I'd like to again welcome you on behalf of the 3 different neighborhood associations that are trying to represent the voice of our joint neighborhoods. So from the left, Ellie Casper and Tom Juris from St. Vincent's Lower End. David Garton and Simon Pongratz from West Broadway. And Sarah McCammon and myself from Fort Point. Now, to that end...
This is Tom Rady.
And I'm Tom Rady. And to that end, how many folks are here from West Broadway? Can you just raise your hand? Awesome. From Fort Point? Raise your hand. Awesome. From St. Vinny's? Awesome. Excellent, excellent. So, and next up, electeds. So I saw Senator Nick Collins. Senator, thank you for spending some time with us today. I saw our at-large councilor, Erin Murphy. Councilor, thank you for joining us today. Lydia Jackson is here from Nick's office. So she's the one making sure whatever Nick says gets done. We know that, Nick. We got to have somebody like Olivia. Shane Perkins in the back from Rep. Beal's office. And I think David...
Ed Flynn's office.
Melissa Lowe from Ed Flynn's office. Right? So I think we...
Have somebody, and I apologize, I already forgot their name, who is from the City Council President, Ruth Z.
There he is. And your name, sir?
Julian.
Julian. From Ruth Z's office, right? City Council President Ruth Z's office. Thank you for coming as well. So I think, as I said, right, this is what we think is an important conversation that we all need to have with each other. There's been, if you've been to any of the Procter & Gamble or the city meetings on this project, right? They tend to, my perspective, perhaps my colleagues' perspective, they tend to try to drive the conversation a certain way. They try to cover the topics they want to cover. They time box the comments that we perhaps want to make, and it doesn't necessarily, and it's all done on Zoom, right? So it doesn't necessarily lend itself to what I would call a productive dialogue amongst and between neighbors on what we think about the proposal and what alternatives, more importantly, what alternatives could be as opposed to what we see along the wall. Right? Now, what we took the time to try to depict the very first image you see as you come in. That is what Procter & Gamble has submitted to the city for heights for rezoning, the very first one. We've attempted to take those sizes and the massing associated with them and drop them into our neighborhood. So the first is a standard massing diagram, and the second, the red buildings, are the new proposed heights and dimensions, if you would, of the P&G submission. Right? So depending upon your perspective, it can be pretty stark, or perhaps, you know, you love what you see and you want to see construction start tomorrow. Again, this is a conversation amongst us, and I'm happy with all points of view. Right? So let's get into this just a tad bit. As I said, tonight's a community conversation. So we didn't invite Procter & Gamble to come and present. We didn't invite the City of Boston, any of the departments, to come and present. They may be in the room, and that's fine, but this is our conversation, right? The 3 neighborhood associations, we need to hear from you. We need to be your voice, but we can't replace your voice. So it's critically important that as we listen and talk amongst each other, we'll take that input in, obviously, but it's still important that everybody stays engaged on this, that everybody engages with the city, engages with our elected officials, with Nick, with Aaron, with Councilor Flynn, with Rep. Beal, everybody, Congressman Lynch, everybody, and share your perspectives. So to that end, in the back, there's 3 QR codes. One of them are the emails of all of the electeds and key people at the city. So hopefully that makes it a little easier for you to kind of click on that QR code. Charlie, good to see you. Charlie Levin from Councilor Flynn's office. Hopefully makes it a little easier for you to go ahead and provide that input. So we're going to listen. The neighborhood associations are going to listen. We'll attempt to try to go ahead and get a consistent view. It's not necessarily guaranteed, right? Because the people that live next to me may be different than the people that live next to Ellie in terms of what their perspectives are, right? But so while we're all South Boston, we still are neighborhoods. So, but we're going to try to. But to that end, it's critically important that you guys stay engaged and submit your thoughts on this. This is kind of important because this is a bit different than the things we usually get engaged in, right? This is not a development per se. This is not like what built the State Street building, what built this CRISPR building, where a developer comes forward, buys a piece of property, proposes a use, gets in front of the neighborhood and says, I'm going to build this building, it looks like this, it has these dimensions, and its use is going to be this, and what do you think? This is not that, right? This is classic rezoning done through something called a master plan. So Procter & Gamble has 31 acres that they currently want to rezone. It's an industrial use, M1 and M8, M2 and M8, sorry. And they're looking to change it to mixed use. They want commercial uses and they want residential uses. They have stated, they have the right to change their mind, obviously. They've stated they do not plan to develop the site. So they're doing this to sell the land once they've relocated off property. They've got a stated direction to keep some headquarters personnel here in South Boston and to move the manufacturing to North Andover, right? That's the direction. They had a 10-year time frame early last year. Not quite sure where that stands, but that's what they're doing. So this would be similar to what occurred with the related Beale project, the parking lot up on A Street, the parking lot on the corner of Binford and A, which was sold to Tishman Speyer, similar to that. So they're taking, P&G takes a piece of their property that they've owned for years and years and years, right? They didn't, when they bought this, when P&G bought this from Gillette, Gillette had this property and was building razors and everything else on it for 100 years. They're pretty proud of that, Sonia, right? 120 years, right? The acquisition cost of this property is long written off on their corporate books, right? So they're looking to take this, they're looking to sell it and make a lot of money. That's what this is going to happen. Yes?
Sorry to interrupt you, but just a quick point. Will the slides you're showing us be available to us online?
Absolutely. Yeah, everything we do is right, publicly available. Right? So that's what's going on here. So in terms of this sale, we don't know how that is going to be accomplished. They haven't shared that with us. We don't know if they're going to sell it as is. We don't know if they're going to tear all the buildings down and clean up the pollution. There's pollution on site. There's at least 3 identified and tracked via Mass DEP pollution sites on the property that need to be cleaned up. So we don't know who's going to be responsible for that, whether P&G is going to do it or whether the new property owners are going to do it. So that's still an open-ended question. And then lastly, of course, whoever buys the property is going to come back in front of community, just like the people that bought this property, just like Related Beale, just like Tishman Speyer, just like the people at Amrines. Whoever buys the property is going to want to do something with it, and they're going to go through that city process to go ahead and work with community to build something. And so they'll have new as-of-right options, so those would be things like height, massing, and use, but they're not guaranteed to stay within that. Right? There's a process called Article 80 that allows them to come in and ask for something different. We see it every time a project goes, right? There's no guarantees that anything that was agreed to in this master plan in fact holds. We've seen it in the 100 acres plan. So anybody that's comfortable with what goes on down on A Street, right? 33% residential was supposed to be, was committed in the 100 acres plan. We've seen far less of that, right? So that's a great example of something that was identified, actually put in zoning into a master plan, and has been, I guess I'd use the term reneged on. Right? So all of that is kind of what is going on. So when we're not going to talk about building, exteriors. We're not going to talk about, planting plans in a park. We're not going to have that conversation, because that won't occur until there's a new property owner that's on site and is actually doing the building, right? This is all about, right, what is going to be approved in terms of building heights, the uses within those buildings, the massing, how many buildings, there's 20 buildings proposed, the people that come here, right? All of that is what we hope the conversation kind of becomes tonight, because that's what we've heard from our neighbors. So there's been a whole number of meetings that have taken place. P&G talks about that. A number of us in the room have participated in quite a number of those. And those are the kind of themes that seem to recur. Height and massing, we've talked about that, 20 buildings. The tallest that they're asking for is 320 feet. Site access, so there was an awful lot of conversation around Traveler Street, Guardian Street, right? Foundry Street, right? Greenbaum Street. All of that came up last time. So access via vehicles to the site, clearly there's a lot of question on that. And safe access to transit, right? So if you put that many more people there, how are they going to get to bus and subway services at the Broadway station? Uses, so it is proposed at 66.5% commercial, 30%, they say minimum, but 30% residential, and 3.5% retail. Clearly, we've heard that a lot of folks want more residential, right? So we want to hear you kind of talk more through that today. The park itself, so the site is a bit unique. The 31 acres, 75% of it is governed by the Chapter 91 regulations. So if the folks are unaware of what that is, that means for that 75%, only half of that property can be built on. That's what Chapter 91 forces, because it's a filled tideland against the water. Sarah's the expert on that, but that's my simple explanation. So the 6.5 acre park, by regulation, they have to deliver. Right? In fact, they actually have to deliver 11 acres, I believe, of open space. Open space includes sidewalks, streets, and other kinds of things. Right? But if you're going to have 11.5 acres, clearly a park should take up a material part of that. And we've heard that people want it to be run just like A Street Park, where it's a City of Boston park with private funding, right, to manage it. And then resiliency. I mean, we live in a world where sea level rise is real. All you have to do is look back 7 years, and we had water in the intersection here of Richard Street and A Street, right? It was there. We had water in the neighborhood, basically, when the harbor came over its banks. So obviously, the solution needs to, their flood prevention solution needs to get done very early in phase, right? So that's kind of what we've heard. Now we're going to get into what I hope is somewhat of a controlled conversation. It's okay if it's not, right? Because I think there's a lot of people impassioned about this project. And what we're after is you letting us know, so hopefully some of this is cathartic, right? So we can all talk amongst ourselves about what we like and dislike about this. But also what's on your mind in terms of alternatives. So it's one thing to come up and say, 320 feet's too tall. What should it be? Because I don't think anybody here is saying we don't want development. And if there are some, that's fine. Happy to hear that point of view as well. But I mean, we have development all around us. We live in an evolving neighborhood. So clearly, when you talk, when you share your input with your neighbors, we're really interested in understanding what else is on your mind, right, in terms of alternatives. So that's kind of how we want the conversation to go tonight. I see Rep. Beal joined us. Thank you, David, for making some time. Yeah.
I know Councilman Wood has walked in maybe already, but...
There he is there, and he's coming up the stairs.
Anna from Councilor Santana's office is here.
Oh, I didn't say Anna. Here she is. Hello. Okay, so why don't we get started? Yeah, Nick? What?
Yeah, no, just to jump start, I appreciate all the...
So one thing.
Okay.
Right?
You have it written on the screen, can't hide from it, my friend, so I'd like to jump in on the park space issue.
Oh, yeah, we didn't, hi, Council Red, thank you. So we didn't have a slot for the electeds to come up and say something, right? And because we've talked about that, and we knew there was a chance some of you may come. What we hope for is that after you've spent a little bit of time listening to the neighborhood, sharing your thoughts on this. That's what we hope for. So, happy now if you want to say something. Is that okay? Okay. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, David.
I'm going to be the timekeeper, and we're sticking with 3 minutes, right, Tom?
We're going to try.
3
But
minutes.
we're not P&G.
I'll give you the 30-second. So when you hit 2.5 minutes, I'm going to say 2.5 minutes. You've got 30 seconds to wrap up. And just to reiterate one key point to what Tom said, this conversation is great for us to have. The key is for each individual to have their voice heard. It's the American way. Respond to Boston planning, regardless of what you think. Not, oh, I mentioned it in a meeting, I said something to Tom. Everybody needs to communicate directly to Boston planning.
So, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
So, if you can, we have a lot of people here tonight and we want to hear from you. If you agree with what a neighbor has said, maybe just consider saying, I agree with what I heard about X from my neighbor that just spoke, and I'd like to add this. So just so that we make sure that we have time for everyone, there's a lot of different key components of the plan. Thank you for considering that.
Good point, sir.
Thank you. David, as a timekeeper, I'm going to put you next to the other mic. Okay?
I think one thing to remember here is whatever gets approved in the zoning will become the baseline, right? We think we're going to have the answer, and we won't. What will happen is, I think Tom talked about it already, is this will become the baseline. And if we say, okay, 130 feet is the highest we can go, guaranteed, 3 years from now, we'll be sitting in this room and someone will want to go to 300 feet. So just be aware that we're just trying to get this manageable. And unfortunately, we won't be able to answer the question today, but at least we can kind of start the conversation about what we want.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, so why don't we get started? Who's first? Yep. I'm going to try to run around and do this, so just name, what name it is.
Okay. Hi, my name is Matt Jones. I live on West 2nd Street. I'm on the IAG with this project with a lot of these great people who have amazing expertise so thank you for organizing this and for your work thus far. I just want to suggest that I think there's some core principles that have already come from these meetings that I think we really need to articulate. And what I want to emphasize is, like you all said, being additive. It's okay to be repetitive. Each and every one of these neighborhood associations is going to be issuing their own position paper on this and distributing it to planning, the elected officials, and we should all be doing that as well. And it doesn't matter if we say the exact same thing we says, it's actually a positive. And I actually hope that we can organize the IAG to come together as much as possible and do one position paper, because to me it's already clear that this project is hugely ambitious commercially, but I agree with those who say it is massively underbaked in terms of its community benefits and really just its urban planning principles. First slide says transit-oriented development. There's no transit orientation to this project so far. We should be having the new MBTA head house that Procter & Gamble builds on site as part of this project to absorb all of this new space. And I think it is really worth emphasizing that Procter & Gamble, not only is the cost basis of this land zero for them, as it has been for decades, it's also one of the 20 or 30 most profitable corporations in the entire world. I think they made about $15 billion in profit last year. So whether they make $300 million or $600 million or $100 million flipping this land, is completely immaterial to them. So we need to have a high level of very specific demands as to what we deserve out of this transformation. So I think it's important to keep in mind that context, that even something like Related Beal or Tishman Speyer, a big commercial developer, Procter & Gamble makes them look like minnows. And this is not some scrappy startup that's trying to do one building. This is a huge section of town. So I think it's really important to keep those stakes in mind when let's be ambitious in terms of what we ask for.
Thanks.
Under 3 minutes, Matt. Way to go.
Nick, I'm coming to you. I'm coming to you. I'm coming to you.
Hi, I'm Donna. I'm from Fort Point. I've lived here almost 16 years, and I am continually disappointed by the amount of residential, civic facilities, cultural facilities that we don't get when land gets developed. We get promised all these things, and we never get it. Also, I'm really worried about parking. Parking is obscene. So those are a few things that I'm concerned about.
You'll be happy to know, Donna, there's 4,500 parking spots in this proposal. Not for you. Not for you. Steve?
Hi, my name is Steve Hollander, and thank you for this meeting. I hope we have more of these. I think that the conversation really has to begin with raising the level of aspiration. And I should say the first thing we should do is ask for the PDA to be approved after the election. Let's put it past that, because everyone knows I'm a strong supporter of Mayor Wu. But I also have told Mayor Wu and her team that this is the least aspirational master plan in my 35 years of working on master plans. And I've worked on every one in the Seaport, and those fell short. This one's far shorter than those. So when I say the level of aspiration should be much higher, it's already been mentioned that Gillette stands to gain $500 million just in the flipping of the property to a new owner before a shovel hits the ground. That's because the land value goes from roughly $10 million per acre, or a little bit more because it's waterfront property, to roughly 4 times that value once it's upzoned through this process. Once the PDA is signed, they can start beginning the process of flipping the lots. So they stand to gain, this is Procter & Gamble, not Gillette. It's not a friendly company. It's Procter & Gamble. They stand to gain $500 million. From that, why isn't there 20 million, let's say? I'm raising aspirations for a pedestrian bridge to go to South Station. That's the level of aspiration that we should be talking about. That would cost $20 million. MBTA head house on the property. That's the rate. Transit people can talk more toward that. A cultural facility we've been asking for a year and a half, not 2 months, and it should have been out of the gate in the plan, not on the park, but in one of the buildable properties. 19 plus 1 for a cultural facility, not in the park. We don't want to subtract park space. The park itself is subject to inundation. 30% of it will disappear with sea level rise. And there's a reason they're doing that, because they want to protect their property from wave action, so they're attenuating it by taking part of the park. But we could push back on that and say, no, let's think of a holistic solution for the entire neighborhood for the resiliency piece, and put some money toward that, and give us the entire park that you're showing us, not a piece of it. Civic facilities, the entire Seaport has one, the EMS station that just opened, despite the fact that we had a library already at Seaport Square promised. District Hall was delivered instead. A temporary building with 2 5-year leases, piece of garbage. So we've had plenty of promises, but what we right
30
now.
seconds.
Okay, we're not going to get the city to approve a library right now. But what we can do is bank the civic space in the project approval, in the zoning, so that way they owe us the space, and the city can come in future years and start investing in that space. We need the civic facilities banked. I'll give it over to Tom, and thank you so much for the meeting.
Steve, as with everything, you can always come back and say more, right? Yep. Who's next? Yep.
Hi, I'm Doreen. I live in Wormwood Street. I've been in the neighborhood since 2001, and obviously have seen a lot of disappointing development. And I just want to add on to what you said and what Steve said about upping the level of aspiration, and I really think the missing conversation is a conversation of legacy. Like, you know, who wants to have a legacy of building this monstrous thing here instead of building something that we, you know, that the world can be proud of, that visiting Boston. Because this is not a very, it's not a visitable suggestion, what they're proposing. They should make it, well, in my opinion, they should make what they're doing, you know, really consider urban planning and make it a jewel. This should be a jewel because it's by the waterfront, not a monstrous situation. And with that in mind, there should be more residential, more retail, that's more lower income and small business owners can afford the rent. I mean, I know Barbara Lynch had her own issues and stuff, but $1 million in rent, she's made, you know, a year. I mean, how can any small business survive? Yeah. You know, so it's part of that, so that we can have thriving neighborhoods. We can't have just like 3% of retail in this neighborhood have a thriving, vibrant neighborhood. That's bullshit. I mean, seriously. And a park, you know. Beautiful cities have amazing parks. We can't, you know, and I've always said in previous meetings about having an iconic park. We have these little networks of green space. Ooh, gee, thanks. You know, with a swing, gee, thanks. You know, that's not a park. And a park designed for dogs, because, you know, half of Boston has a dog, and the dog parks need to be designed by a dog owner, not make a poo toilet for my dog who's afraid to go in there. So yes. Anyway, well, that's me. Right.
Thank you. And over here.
Andrew Newman, been down in this neighborhood since 1985. So we all know what developers want, and every square inch counts. It's just a simple question. Seeing that we live so close to the airport, is there a height limitation that was placed on them? Or, to rephrase the question, if there wasn't an airport, could they have asked for these buildings to be 600 feet tall?
Yes. There is a height limitation. I want to say it's 320 feet or 40 feet or something. There is a limitation, Andrew. And that's the reason why the buildings probably, well, it goes all the way to the seaport, right? The limitation prevented those buildings from being taller. Yeah. They prevent these buildings from being taller. And so to answer your second point, yeah, if there wasn't one, they probably could have asked for one. Okay. And what that exact one, on one of the links is the link to the project page. In one of those presentations is a couple of slides that talk about what that height limitation is. So.
But it is.
Sarah, go ahead.
I was just saying, I believe, and hopefully I'm not misspeaking, that I believe that the heights that FAA, given the seaport's closer proximity to the airport, limits those heights and to a greater extent than what's being proposed here, which is why you see the higher heights being proposed in our part of South Boston.
Thanks, sir. Tom, would it be all right if I just add for that? I don't want to, sorry to jump in, but a point I made last night, I just want to emphasize on this point because it's really important. The massing that is planned right now is based off of those FAA heights, which is not how Boston zoning works. It's not how urban planning works. You know, if that was the rationale, there'd be 700-foot buildings on Broadway, which obviously makes no sense. That's part of the problem here, is they're taking the highest possible height that they can find, the highest possible height limitation they can find, and they're ignoring all the other buildings around. I think a lot of people in this room think that this is kind of a tall building, and that's kind of a tall building. Well, the buildings they're proposing are three times as high.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Paula. I've lived at Fort Point since 1981. So, I've seen this change tremendously. But my big thing is the lousy 30% residential, and it scares me, and it scares me because as part of those aspirations that you described, Steve, as you recall, we were promised a lot more residential, and somehow developers get to change the zoning, and all of a sudden, there is no more residential. So that's my big thing for this whole, I mean, I agree with everything that people are saying, but my big point is, there's got to be a way to make sure that a developer can't come in, change the zoning, and take away all the promised residential. And I believe we need some affordable, we need a mix of residential housing.
Do you have a number in mind?
Yeah, what, go
what's
ahead.
the number? Do you have a number in mind?
Percentage
It'd be nice to get ideas, like, so an example I'll use.
Yeah, I don't want to nix commercial totally, but I think that it should be more, it should be switched, 30% commercial, 66.5 residential.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Paul.
So if I can just add one comment.
Yeah.
I used to develop housing, did 500 units of affordable housing in Boston. One of the things about the way that this is being explained is housing is a cost to them as opposed to it can be a profit center, which we all know it can be a profit center. So I, in my mind, have 2,400 units of housing in mind. So
Right now, it's at 1,800.
Right.
That's right.
So we're more.
Hi, my name's Karen. I live at Court Square Press. I've been there for 10 years, and I appreciate you hosting this forum for all of us. I would say that we should plan on a minimum or maximum of 30% for commercial, double the residential, guarantee that a lot of that residential is affordable housing, and then up the retail so that it matches the reason we all moved here, which was a neighborhood. And I thought last night in the IAG meeting, when the architect said, well, you can't totally compare that to West Broadway because those are only 4-story buildings. Well, that's why we chose to live here. So I think that's critical. The other concerns I have are, I agree that the civic building should be one of the buildings, not part of the park space that gets absorbed. And transportation is a huge issue that has not clearly been addressed. And by living at Court Square Press, we are the ones that are being proposed with a 320-foot tower in front of our building. So when I just think that's double the height of the McAllen and the Cambria Hotel. So if you think of us at Court Square Press, a 6-story building, looking at 320 feet and the shadow impact as well as the transportation and the proposal to use Greenbaum where the buses would come off Broadway, take a sharp right onto Greenbaum, and then right onto Foundry that are one-ways versus two-ways just seems ridiculous to me. So thank you.
Thank you. So some of the mitigation will be blinds for you.
Yes. Great. My name is Teresa, and I live on Channel. I'm also an IAG member. Thank you guys for hosting this, and I'm hoping you will do more of these. I'm also really excited to hear that our leaders are here, right? That makes a difference, and thank you guys for being here. We must also hold them accountable, right? Because I think what is very clear is that there's a lot of work to do here, right? So we're hoping that we can work very closely with our leadership and they can help us get these messages across. I think I want to echo a lot of what already has been said, but what I feel being a part of the IAG meeting is that it's a transparency issue, right? They've held a lot of great meetings, but they all feel like the same, right? We get the same presentation of what they've done for us and all the meetings they've had, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of traction and a lot of detail. It just seems like a lot of selling to us. So I think holding them accountable is also critical. And I agree with everyone. The height is ridiculously high. We will not have any sunlight. And I think the engagement of this community is amazing, and it's a huge reason why we all live here. So thank you.
Yay, neighbors.
And apologies coming, apologies. We run out of seats. So this is another one of these examples of
the lack of robust civic space that allows us to come together as neighbors. Right? So sorry that people have to sit off in the ether. Right? We've got them over there, there's a couple there. Sorry, it's as hot as it is. We have what we have. This is what we have. And this is
seats up front.
Right? There's a couple back here. We've got some bar stools, no bar. But so again, just as an example, coming to you, Domingo.
Hi, my name is Larry Martin. I live down 249 A Street. I brought this up the first meeting that they had in person, and because I was trying to do my due diligence and do a little homework, and I got a lot of lip service. And I think, Matt, you had my back on this. It had to do with the in lieu fee for affordable housing. So if they say that they're going to commit to a certain amount of affordable housing, they can then pay to have it somewhere else, which doesn't really make it accessible to people who are looking for affordable housing here. So I don't know how to hold them to that here and not somewhere else. I don't know if anyone can speak to that, but if we're looking to be aspirational, it might be nice to have affordable housing where maybe we want it.
So just to answer that, they have changed their tune a little bit, and they haven't committed to it. And even if they do commit to it, the question is, does it get followed through in the paperwork? But the IAG, the way it's presented to us now, because we have been reiterating that, is that it will be on site. Sweet. So that's one of those things that we want to make sure all of us say in our letters. When we were talking about not repeating, we're talking about not repeating here. When in your letters, repeat everything. So the message is loud and clear as far as what the important things in affordable housing on site in our neighborhood is one of the key issues. Thank you.
Thanks, Domingo.
I just would say we also should talk
Can you
about
step
what-
up to the mic if you're going to say? Thank you. We can't hear you back here.
It's usually not. I just
Here and
wanted
then
to add one quick point to the affordable housing conversation, and that is, would love to hear your thoughts and have you consider home ownership or rental or both for affordability on site.
It's safe to say, Sarah, the majority of the 1,800 units are rentals. Okay?
And that's what's being proposed,
Exactly.
but that doesn't mean that's what has to happen.
I'm just saying.
Well, and the other thing, just quickly, as far as affordable housing, this is under the mandate that the city has. Affordable housing is a wide range. As we know, we live in very unaffordable areas right now. Boston is such an extreme high cost. I don't know about you, but I probably couldn't afford to move here now. So different ranges of affordable housing too.
Here and in the center. No, take your time. Nick works for us.
Especially you.
I'm Angela, WBNA, and I live at 100A. I agree with everything everybody has said so far. I live directly across from Gillette, but the height of the building, even with office workers, is a really good height. Now, it's okay, we're going to lose the city view. We're not going to be like those bougie people and say, my issue is privacy. So now I have this monstrous building on West 2nd, which is a small street, and I literally will have people looking in.
Yeah.
So I have to keep my windows closed the entire time. So now for me, it's not good living. You know, it's to have this people looking in. So that's sort of my thing.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
You're pretty loud. Alicia. Alicia from St. Vincent's. No.
Is it good, Okay.
Well, here I'm pretty loud. My question is, they proposed that, was it M2 and M8?
Mm-hmm.
What is reasonable that we should we be specific and say we want, I don't know, M1 or something? Like, what are the different zoning things we should demand?
Well, I'll say something. I'll let my colleagues say something. I'll come up to the front, too. Sarah's telling me I have to come to the front.
Fair is fair.
So I don't think we're zoning attorneys. And I think if we try to be zoning attorneys, we're going to fail at it. Right? My opinion. I think what we talk about is things like the height of the buildings in the neighborhood, the uses that we want those buildings to actually, so the people that are in them, things like the size of the parks, the size of the roads, the direction of the roads, those are the kind of things we should talk about. And then put the onus on the city to deliver on those things. And that language would be reflected back in some kind of agreement that we'd all have a chance to look at and all have a chance to say it either meets what we've asked for or it doesn't. So that's what I think. So if we go down the path of trying to be a zoning attorney, I just think we're going to fail. Yeah. Senator, if you, Doreen, go ahead.
With regards to...
You got to speak up now or come to the front.
With regards to expanding, is that working? Oh, with regards to expanding the amount of residential, when we moved to this neighborhood, there were a lot of families that lived in our building, and we grew up, you know, our kids grew up together, and then by 5 or when everyone started to be about 5 or 6 years old, everyone started leaving the neighborhood, and we asked at the time for our kids were going to a charter school, and we asked for a charter school to be built in the neighborhood, and we were told, well, there's no kids there. And I was like, well, if you actually build it, then they will come. And we need to also include in that is the civic plan idea. Does that include a school? Because we need a school. And then the other part is the transport is A Street is already a blocked bottleneck as it is, which I'm sure you all know, but yeah, so a school, and I don't know how you're going to figure out A Street.
Hey guys, take over. I'm trying to get this mic fixed.
Okay. Anyone who wants to speak, why don't we queue up here?
Yeah, it's a good idea.
So anybody who's going to be speaking, Nick doesn't need a microphone, I don't think.
Tom beat the daylights out of that one.
No, Tom, we can hear you now.
I got a mic, Nick. I got a mic for it.
I know you usually don't.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you, Tom, and thank you for everyone for pulling this together. And I think we have a great example around the corner of if we do stay at the table, what can be accomplished. We began last winter or the winter before without a park on Cypher Street, and after some community meetings and some community involvement, we got a park on Cypher Street. So there's a small example of what can happen when the discussion may not feel like it's going the right way by staying at the table. I know it's been discussed, all 5 areas of the park. I just wanted to point out, and we're trying to make this happen across other parts of the waterfront, but I think the goal here, it should be to maintain it as an Article 97 of the Constitution, protected green space. Now, that doesn't necessarily require it to be run by the city, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. I know, private maintenance agreement, which A Street has, and I think that's what the goal is. But the Article 97 protection, which can be done via dispositional legislation. The resilience, I think we want to identify what the delta is between what's required by insurance to build a facility like this and what is extra value added for the community. So it's not all lumped into one, but know that some of this is non-negotiable. It's not necessarily entirely a community give back. The library that Steve had mentioned, we did get state funding for that, but the city had taken a pass in the schedule of things. They ended up moving forward with the Chinatown one. We haven't given up. Understanding that there is a couple different processes here. The planning process, which is significant with the PDA. Also at the state level, that's at the state level, the Chapter 91 process, which governs the size and the relationship between this plan and the waterfront. Chapter 91 is its own process. We'll have our own meeting and hearing, and it's also an opportunity to define, in addition to some of these issues around height and massing, the uses, particularly of cultural facilities in that area. And so that, understand that what the outcome is can be spelled out exactly how the community wants it. And if it's not, sometimes, as we've seen, we're chasing what should otherwise be a public obligation. And in addition, I know it was brought up the 100-acre plan. This is technically in the landmark district. It's a landmark district. It's very few in the city. It's not.
It's not.
Speak up a little bit.
It's right outside.
It's just outside the landmark district.
Just so the folks over
That's
in the
interesting.
hinterland can-
Okay, yes. That should be looked at, to be expanded.
Wrap up, please.
Yep, and then the last is the environmental, well, look, give me the list. Environmental impact is at the state level. There's a MEPA process called Massachusetts Environmental Protection Agency, and that is a review process to show, you know, it was talked about the massing, but also the amount of cars, and that has to get signed off as well. So while we're communicating to the BPDA, understand that there are other avenues for advocacy at the state level, both for the Chapter 91 process and MEPA.
Thanks, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom, to the Ford Point neighborhood, the West Broadway and St. Vincent's, and thank you to Senator Collins and Rep. Beal as well for your leadership. Councilor Murphy is here also. I had the opportunity to listen last night to the meeting on Zoom, the two-hour meeting, and I learned a lot from residents about what they really want. And I listened closely, and residents have been clear that the height is too big. They're clear to me that we need more affordable housing. But the main point I wanted to make is this is the opportunity for us to come together as a community. And it's also an opportunity for the BRA, the BPDA, the planning team, to listen to residents, because that's their job. And it's our job to advocate for what's in the best interest of the residents. And I believe what's in the best interest of the residents is making sure that they are heard and they are respected. And that's a critical part of this process, is whether or not we're going to respect you and listen to you, and your voice will be heard. That's why we're here today. We need to stay focused. We need to stay united together and advocate for what is right here in this neighborhood. And that is too big of a project, too big of a height. We do need affordable housing, maybe for veterans. And Steve mentioned, and Nick mentioned, a public library. Maybe it's not in the immediate future, but you know something, when I started, an EMS station wasn't in the immediate future either, and we didn't give up on that. We're going to have one soon. A fire presence in the South Boston waterfront was not immediate. That's going to happen. And again, if we work together with Steve and Nick and all of the elected officials here, we can get a public library, but we have to stay united. Thank you, Tom.
I'm going to do my run through the electeds. David? Okay.
Good evening. Thank you, Tom. Thank you to our civic associations for pulling us together for this important community conversation. Just a few things to expound on that have already been brought up tonight. You know, this conversation is important. It will continue, but I think Tom made the point earlier. Whatever comes out of this process at the planning department, you know, we see it after something passes planning. PDA happens, you'll get a notice of project change to, you know, make changes, because I think this conversation started pre-pandemic, you know, that P&G was looking to do something with their acreage, and it took however many years. The world has changed, you know, through several elections and events. So keep that in mind, you know, that this is still going to be a starting point. You know, on the component for resiliency, I think it's important. A lot's been said about the value of the property and what's going to be built there. Resiliency shouldn't be a community benefit. That is the cost of doing business for waterfront property. That's how they should be. That's how the landowner should be protecting their asset. That's being a responsible landowner. You know, so that's how I feel about it. And you know, if you feel the same, encourage you to write in. On the library component, I think I was working for Senator Collins when he was a staffer. We got a bond authorization to have a library built here in Fort Point, the South Boston waterfront, and it's important. This is one of the fastest growing communities in the city of Boston, if not in the U.S. But when, come election time and we're dropping off pizzas for poll workers, we're in private residences. You deserve to have a community space, so make sure that you are vocal on that when you write in, and make sure that you're engaging. Community speaking together in one loud voice really moves the needle. We saw that happen with the advocacy down at Channelside. That project changed significantly with the concerted effort. We saw it happen at the power plant. So stay engaged. Make sure that you're writing into all of your elected officials, whether they're local elected, citywide electeds. Keep it personal, but know that the more we see in the inbox, that's going to get eyeballs. So I do question where the height and density came from. If I was to speculate a guess, it would be the growth zone, which allowed for heights, but this isn't in the growth zone area. So share a lot of the concerns here tonight. I apologize for taking up too much time, but want to thank everybody for spending an evening in the summer with us, and we're here to listen. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We've had one already. Anybody else new? I promise we'll do rounds two.
I just want to comment, thank you to all three electeds that just spoke, particularly for being timely and making really good points. Ed, last night, I think you made it very clear, this is the beginning of a process. It's the city's responsibility to react to this as well. So thank you for that, and thanks, Nick, about the library.
Yep. Thanks, guys. Emily?
Hi, Emily Sukis in the St. Vincent Neighborhood Association. A few specific things I'd like to see come forward in this plan. With this amount of residential and thinking about the legacy and the longevity of families staying in this neighborhood, I'd like to propose that there are a certain number of units that have 3+ bedrooms. In thinking about transit to and from the MBTA station that exists today, I want to make sure that the roadways are wide enough for buses, that sidewalks are a minimum of 10 feet wide to account for supposedly all the new residents that are here, but also tourists and office workers moving to and from. And when it comes to the civic space and thinking about the families and multi-generations being here, I'd like that civic facility to include things for children and things for seniors. And I'd like those things to exist under the same roof.
In the front?
To jump on to Emily's
No, hang on.
But I also have a loud voice. Alice Wong on Congress Street, so Fort Point. Specifics, since you asked for specifics. I worked with the state housing partnership, so there is an interagency agreement on 10% of the publicly supported housing, or 3 bedrooms over. So maybe that's something that we could include here. Because I love that idea, because that really signals a family.
And each of you put that in your letters, too.
Yes.
Thank you. Yep.
Okay, Savvy is really shy, but I'm going to give her the mic anyways because I think every voice needs to be heard.
Go ahead, Sam.
Affordable housing.
Affordable housing to own. It's
How much?
very important.
How much? How much?
For me and my family.
Okay. Enough for that, right?
Yes, I have a daughter and I have a granddaughter who's 11 months and I'm having a grandson's coming in November. And I would love us to live together. Thank you.
Any questions over here in the hinterland?
Great job.
Hang on.
Just a request, I'm Brett from Leo Building. Just a request, is there a way to sort of get bullet points, sort of summaries of some of the points were brought up? You're asking for us to potentially parrot some of these things. I don't have the greatest memory to remember all of the great things that were discussed here today. Is there a way that we could potentially provide that either as one of these links or somewhere else?
Thank you. So South Boston Beats is recording this. It'll be a YouTube link. So for the folks that didn't have a chance, or if you want to remind yourself what you missed, and I know that my colleague Sarah's feverishly taking notes, and we'll try to distill down, if we could, that
basically what everybody has said. We'll do the best we can.
And has everyone signed in and given us your email address, because that's how we're going to be distributing. So
Correct.
we'll distribute
Great point, David.
Online, West Broadway Neighborhood Association will have it on their Facebook page, but just make sure we have the information.
Yep, that allows us to do direct communication. Anybody else over here? Okay, coming back. Yep. Oh, hang on.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tammy. I live over at Wormwood Street, and I've been here for 25 years. Sorry, 20 plus years, so I've seen all the change as well. I parrot every single thing everyone has already said, but one thing that isn't on this list that we've talked about, but I think is super important, is the transit head house inside the 31 acres. So telling us that people are going to use South Station or Broadway and somehow get to this behemoth 31 acre thing without somehow using all of our roads and all of the parks and all of the Harbor is insane. So I think the fact that the 23 acres had to have 2 head houses and that was a requirement, and this 31 acres doesn't even have to have 1. And they're going to go underground and build 4,500 parking spaces. So if you're already going underground, you can put a head house in.
That's right.
That's all I have to say.
Thanks, Tammy.
Thank you. My name is Marcy Jackson. I live at 9 West Broadway. I've been there for 19 years. A couple of things I would say, and I would piggyback off what was just said in terms of the MBTA and driving on the streets. 9 West Broadway, which is over 100 years old, we're between the Street Bridge and the West Broadway Bridge. Right now, presently, those are a nightmare. Try crossing those streets even when you have a no turn on red. It's playing chicken with your life, which I often do, but you know, it's horrible. I've worked with the city, I've talked to people at the Department of Transportation. I can't get them to put a red arrow on that same light fixture. Okay, so all I can imagine is 4,900 or 4,500 cars going back and forth. Not everyone can live in the neighborhood. They're going to park there. They're only going to use those bridges, the egress road or the whatever the frontage, whatever that road is that comes in, allows you to come in the morning, but not to leave at night. So they're going to be coming on all of our streets. They're going to be speeding as they normally do. They're going to be ignoring the lights. There has been no concerted, comprehensive plan to work with the city of Boston. I mean, there's conversations. There's been no comprehensive plan to work with the Department of Transportation because they control the bridges. There's been no comprehensive plan to work with the MBTA on any of this. It's all of this, whatever gets built is going to get built, and then we're going to have to deal with the after effect, which is all of that congestion, all of those parking and people running lights issues. And that's not fair. And the second thing is, I'm offended by this Gillette plan because it treats us like the redheaded stepchild, you know, the South Boston neighborhoods. They're walling up. They're walling up our neighborhood. They're putting a barrier so, you know, they can have their little community, their city, and all those graphics were so nice, but they're ignoring what's already been here. We were here. We were a neighborhood. It's not like the seaport or anything like that. The final thing I'd like to say is, can we get a statement of some letter by all the neighborhood associations, in addition to all of us writing the city? We want to have all of you stand up for us. We want to have West Broadway. We want to have Fort Point. We want to have, I'm sorry, I forgot. St. Vincent's. Will we get that?
A couple of things. I think you heard us talk about a desire to kind of create a consolidated letter. We'll see how we do with that, because different neighborhoods may have different perspectives. Clearly, Fort Point, I can't speak for my colleagues, we will write a letter, right? And I'm sure West Broadway and St. Vincent's will probably do the same thing, right?
One thing just to piggyback off of that, I can't underscore, it's the volume of people. Neighborhood associations could be one person, Ellie could decide what she wants to write down. I could decide what I write on West Broadway. It's the individual. This is America. Everybody gets a vote, right? So it's important that we do that, to your point, as a neighborhood association. One of the things that I brought up with the IAG yesterday specifically was get rid of that island head house, make 2 left-hand lanes onto Dorchester Ave. We don't need Greenbaum, right? But that's one voice. So the idea is Gillette or P&G has given us, idea of what they want to do. Then they're going to come back with a, variation of it. The city hasn't weighed in. The electeds haven't weighed in yet. So rather than a rushed process, it's already started to slow down, wouldn't you say, Matt? They were screeching to get this finalized in June. So we have been raising our hands saying this is too fast, this is too much to absorb. But it's the individual voices, the volume speaks.
Thanks, David. I will say, sorry.
Hi, I'm Ellie Casper from St. Vincent's Neighborhood Association, the oldest neighborhood association in the city of
You're not
Boston.
the oldest.
The association is the oldest. And honestly, we've been at this for a very long time, Tom Juris and myself. I love to see all the people that have been in the neighborhood now 25 or more years, but the truth of it is, if we had our way, you wouldn't be here. No offense, but it's the truth. This battle is ongoing. It never ends. This is just a blip on the screen because it's going to happen one way or another. We need to be together, stand firm, and decide with the BPDA, because they are a big player in this, with our elected officials to have our backs, and then move forward with some considerable proposal. Thank you.
Thanks, Ellen. So I think to that point, a couple of things, right? And we're going to start doing some more. Development, we live in a place where development happens, to your point, Ellen, right? This building happened. The idea is to make it...
Excuse me, to add to that, Tom, to your point about them selling, Procter & Gamble selling. This building was bought, purchased, the foundation maybe?
Foundation medicine, yeah.
Gone, sold.
Yep. So the key is, whatever gets developed is something we can live with, but that fits in, I think, is a theme that we've heard. The other is, these ideas about head houses and things can't be passed off. Steve was on this, and Matt was, can't be passed off to the buyer of the land. The value, the amount of money that's going to happen with the sale of the land, these significant infrastructure investments need to occur prior to that sale, right? It has to be paid for that way. Right? Go ahead.
No, I just want to be...
Okay, hang on. Here, then Brandon, and then Warren.
And Brad has his hand up over there.
Remind us who you are.
Oh, I'm Donna from... my biggest nightmare is having 20 glass buildings and have the place look like the seaport. Is there any way that we could have it written in that these buildings have to look like the personality of the neighborhood? And, Seaport could be anywhere in the world that has no Boston personality at all, and that's, it's happening already.
Thank you. Coming to you, Brandon, next, and then, yep, and then over here. There's a whole bunch of people up here too. So Gillette specifically excluded their property from the Fort Port Historic Channel Landmark District back when it was formed, and they did so because they didn't want to participate. So, not to answer your question directly, doesn't mean that you can't ask for that, and the neighborhood, if there's enough of a groundswell for that, can't ask for that. But right now we're focused kind of on the massing and the heights and the roads, and not necessarily the design of the building. Thank you. Brandon?
Hi everyone, my name is Brandon. I'm an IAG member and I'm also a dragon boater in Fort Point Channel. I have lots of thoughts around watershed activation and boathouse related things, but in the context of this meeting, I want to be wearing the hat as an Alston Brighton resident. So I'm not a resident of this neighborhood, but My friends in Austin Brighton, we are also big advocates for more affordable housing there as well, more abundant housing broadly speaking. And so to David's point about the quantity of comments to really push the needle in a certain direction, I know there are also other neighborhoods and other residents of Boston, and probably people outside of Boston as well, who would probably align with some of these ideas of more housing, more retail. And so to that point, after we summarize the points and there's clear things that the neighborhood would like to see in terms of height, in terms of transportation, I think there's also the possibility to involve other neighborhoods as well. Because if I talk to all of my friends in the abundant housing group in Austin Brighton and say, there's a lot of housing coming at Gillette, we think we should back this too, they'll all back it too, because more housing helps everybody. And so I guess my perspective on this is, there are other neighborhoods as well that will also support the same things that you guys are pushing for. And if a wider voice can help push the narrative to what everybody wants, then I think there's value in that. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. Over to you, Brad, and then I'm going to rotate around up here.
Hello, hi everyone. My name is Bradley Vernatter. I am a resident at 150 Dorchester Ave at the Leo Building, and prior to that I lived on Channel Center Street. I'm also the head of a cultural organization in the neighborhood, Boston Lyric Opera, which has our studios in partnership with Midway on Channel Center Street. I'd like to thank the IAG members, the neighborhood leadership, for organizing this and for dedicating so much time to this important effort, and to the community and elected officials who've shown up to show their passion for this. I'd like to add a concept, a word to the conversation that I haven't heard yet, which is artists. And I think of that word because I personally moved to Fort Point several years ago because it's one of the New England's largest and oldest artist community, and I am a new member of the community, but have learned so much about the history of artist facilities and artist neighborhoods and artist buildings in this community. And when I look at what's being proposed to not have percentages for cultural facilities, civic communities, arts communities, arts facilities, it just seems to me like it's just missing from the math here. I also think about the opportunity that this brings for not just the Fort Point community and the surrounding neighborhoods, but also for the entire city to think about, as other people were saying, raising our aspirations, to think about the ways that civic space and cultural space can really work together to contribute to one of the most vibrant communities possible. And there's a lot of examples of that, not necessarily here in Boston, but in many other cities around the world, world-class cities as Boston is as well, where there's facilities that have libraries, several libraries, theaters, daycare centers in the ground floor of theaters, and for meetings like this, it could also take place in an assembly space. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to be really ambitious and really creative, and to not lose the personality that I heard you talking about. And I know that the artists of this community are really critical to have established so much of the personality of the neighborhood.
Bradley, could you quantify a little? Could you just give us some, for instances, quantifying either, I want a percentage, a square footage, just give us some, if you have any. If you don't, then that's fine too.
Yeah, I think a minimum of 10 to 15% of civic and cultural space would be critical to make a neighborhood like this really shine and really a vibrant space for all of us, including on top of that, the retail that would be needed to support groceries and other activity.
I'm going to speak as an individual, so thank you, Bradley. Give him a round of applause. Thank you. Just to let you know, I am timing myself here. So I am actually very excited about this development. It has a lot of promise. I'm not necessarily excited about everything I see proposed, but it's a great opportunity. So back to Steve Hollinger, I think we need to hear your voice consistently, which we do, thank God, about being aspirational. So what do I want to see? I want to see more housing. I want to see it. I think it's going to be different than our community right now, because I think we warrant a little bit of change too on the waterfront. But I want things that we care about. So a library. I want to rethink time and space is a big concept in design. So why couldn't we have, I've thrown this out at buildings, just blue skying it. Why couldn't we have a building that Stop and Shop headquarters is here? They have
key supermarket on the first floor, then they have their offices, then there's affordable housing for 7 stories, then there's luxury housing. Rethinking the way we design things. It doesn't have to be 30 stories, all these things, but making it livable, making it multi-use property. I think it'd be lovely if we had a place where the Boston Lyric Opera could perform at night. And maybe it's a daycare during the day, and maybe it's a senior center, maybe it's a community center, or a gym, or all these things. Let's think differently, and let's think not just in the US. Look at other places in the world that are doing it right. What do we want to see? So rather than just reacting to what's coming up here, let's put our dreams in order. And speaking for myself, I want a supermarket. Eventually, I want a senior center. Not right this second. Maybe assisted living, maybe a funeral home, you know, get the whole spectrum. So just think big and get those ideas out there, so.
I'm still waiting for the casino.
And the access to the transit is key. I brought that up again.
Yeah, I actually wanted to follow with that thread because there was some great discussion and some questions, especially with our elected officials, both local and the state, in attendance. Wanted to be speaking to you on this because I actually did, as an IAG member, take the responsibility to read the transportation study that has been filed. Just to be clear, it's very long, it's very technical, it's very shocking because there's no transportation plan with this project right now. There's just a transportation study. There's no plan whatsoever. Some of it talks a little bit like it's a plan, but I promise you I am not being unfair in summarizing the access to transit as Broadway's over there and South Station is over there. That is the extent of it right now. That's ridiculous. Then in terms of the traffic, just really quickly summarizing, 30 or 40 pages of statistics. By their own admission, their consultant included percentages where there's a significant deterioration in traffic conditions due to this project. It projects out to 2035, which maybe the site will be mostly full, maybe it will be half full, but just under that assumption, it grades the current intersections, A, B, C, D, E, and F, sort of like in grade school. Right now it says there's acceptable performance on 53%. We can all debate that given what's going on in A. But by their own admission, that drops to 40% by 2035. Poor performance, D and F, goes from 47 to 60%. Almost 2/3 of the intersections around the site are going to be D or F graded if they do what they want. And again, there's nothing after this. The F goes from 11 to 15%, so increased by 50%. There you have no plan. There's nothing else in the plan, in the transportation study after that. There's no plan to mitigate any of this. And so I want to hear, from our elected officials at the state level, because what's often really frustrating about these meetings, especially if they're Article 80, is the MBTA as a state agency is not in the room. And with something, Tom and I have talked about this, with something as substantial as a project of this size, Procter & Gamble, again, making $15 billion a year, should say, yes, we are fully sponsoring a new entrance to the Red Line on our site. We are doing this to improve the intersections in this specific technical way. The Tide line, I believe it's called, which was supposed to be the new bus line that's coming across, all they say is that they're open to considering it. They should be paying for it. They should be granting it to the transportation agency. That's the level of ambition that we need to be talking about in transportation. So I just want to emphasize to our elected officials, of all the problematic parts of this project, I find the transportation to be the most completely underdone part. And we need your advocacy and help to really get that to a completely different place than it is right now, because right now it's nowhere. Thanks,
And just a couple of follow-on points. It's not just the Red Line. There are 3 major bus routes that come in and out of Broadway Station. Safe access to those bus routes is critical. Not everybody just commutes off the Red Line. They come and go on the buses. Yep. Anybody first-timers looking around? Okay.
Doreen again. To add to
point about transportation. Has anyone tried going to Whole Foods in a car? I mean, that's ridiculous that we have to queue along that little section. You know, again, just such little foresight. And with regards to having transportation paid for the millions of dollars that P&G are getting, is it too much to ask for a subway? I mean, all world-class cities have a subway. I've lived in Paris. Everyone's been, well, everyone, not everyone, but people, you know, I've lived in Paris, I've lived in London, and I travel a lot, and they all have amazing subways. We should have had a subway when Seaport was, we shouldn't have had a Silver Line. We should have had a subway. I mean, Jesus Christ, 4,000, whatever. I mean, don't get me started, but we have got me started.
Thank you, Doreen.
Right here, behind Matt.
Hi everyone, I'm Dan McMahon with the West Broadway Association. I think I'd like to hop on the site access specifically and excuse me, and what increase in traffic and deterioration of access actually would mean for us as a community, and what the opportunity, to Dave's point, that not only the city but the state has with kind of this untouched area that we have here in Boston, right? This could be one of the crown jewels of the city, of the Eastern Seaboard, in terms of what it means for culture and what it means for Boston. But regardless of if we have 80% residential or 80% commercial, the increase in use here is not in a vacuum. We have the dot development plan that also looks very similar to this, a bunch of nondescript 30-story towers that are also going to increase ingress and egress across Dot Ave. The roads can only be so wide. Even if you solve A Street, you have Summer Street, you have 4th Street, you have Broadway. They're not going to get any bigger, right? So what does that mean for emergency response? What does it mean for our police? What does it mean for people that actually need to get somewhere in a hurry at 5 p.m., right? God forbid you have a heart attack in rush hour, you're probably screwed. The city, the state, they can invest in the T, they can invest in policies now, they can invest in planning for what it means for Boston to have 10,000 people coming to our neighborhoods every day, right? This is something that the city must do. It's not something that's gonna sneak up on them. You're not gonna build 20 towers overnight, but it's not something that we've heard a plan for, right? I don't think this is on Procter & Gamble to do. This is on our elected officials. It's on us to be involved in what that planning process looks like, because regardless of what actually occupies these buildings, the impact is going to be very real to you and me. Whether it's an emergency, whether it's an emergency for our neighbors or friends, it's going to be a real problem. And even at 30% efficacy, that's pretty bad, because if you try to get out of Broadway and A today in the morning, it takes 10 minutes.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
Being aspirational, as he passes the mic, I've asked, why isn't water access more of an idea? I know the bridges are an issue, but if we're thinking big, and Tom even has an idea for, we're calling it, the Tom bypass to the South Station. Why don't we have pedestrian access, not waiting for the post office? Why can't we go through some access by the tracks, creating an area like that? So this is a big planning idea, lots of eyes are on it. So what are the things we want to think about?
I'm on the submarine thing.
The ready pass,
Yeah.
so that's what I call it.
That's a great name. Emily Sukas again, over in St. Vincent's neighborhood. As we think about the uses in this master plan, I also want to call out the logistics of leasing space to retail uses. Having a grocer, having restaurants, all require access and multiple deliveries each day. So as we think about site access, whether that's coming from the water, subway for the workers to get there, realistically, all these businesses need vehicular access for all of their deliveries. So building that into the master plan, thinking possibly about a delivery-only zone, something we experience everywhere in our neighborhoods are the double parked cars, delivery bikes, scooters, you name it. So just thinking about how do we account for that expansion of use in a safe way to get everyone what they need.
Thanks, Emily. Yes.
Lydia's also here if you want to.
Yeah, I noticed Lydia here. Hi, Lydia. Lydia Pulaski from the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services. Thank you, Lydia, for popping in.
Hi, I put together a few notes based on what I heard so far.
Steve, who you are?
Oh, Steve Hollinger, sorry, I spoke earlier. On the massing conversation, I think people interested in a better plan should understand that there will be substantial massing because the city needs significant housing. Cities in crisis more than any other city in the nation other than maybe San Francisco and some other cities in New York. So you're going to get a lot of density. So the question becomes, you're not going to kill that. You can shift it. You can maybe move it around and maybe reduce it by some amount, but you're not going to get rid of it. So the people interested in that conversation should get together and talk about things like if you increase residential, as David said, to roughly 50% of the GFA, then you can have a conversation about what residential building massing looks like, because often it's thinner as you go up, and then you can figure out how the massing works out and where to put that type of massing so it makes the most sense. You can work within what you think you're going to end up with. If you trim away 25% of the total density, what do you end up with? And where should you shift the massing so it has the least impact on the people that feel today it's impacting them? I would do that. I like the idea of front phasing the inundation solutions because our neighborhood is at ground zero for inundation risk. Fort Point is ground zero, and we really need to get that solved right away. So Gillette, in exchange for all this, the signature on a PDA should commit to building that berm, whether or not they get the FEMA grant, which really isn't that much. That's $10 million, and they should be held to that. Another thing is that Fort Point, you know, I was told early on that Fort Point had roughly the density of the seaport, believe it or not, because these stumps in the seaport that are tall, actually, it's very auto-centric. It's designed for cars. It's not really designed for public transit as it should have been. There should have been light rail and there should have been a lot of things. So you have these buildings that are pretty far apart. But in Fort Point, with the buildings shoulder to shoulder and narrow alleys, you have 6-story buildings roughly, and then you have very narrow alleys. It has character, but it's actually very high density. So when you hear, they're kind of competing asks. When you hear, I want very wide roads, you could actually say the opposite. Get the heights down at this location, but shift the density so the buildings are more shoulder to shoulder and there's narrower vehicular. Wrap it up? Okay, now we're on vehicular streets. But these are the kind of things that probably should be in a conversation about massing. So I hope that that can happen in a committee or something like that. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. So I'm just cognizant of time and the heat in this room and the fact there's an awful lot of people have been standing through this whole thing. It's 7:30. We've gone through a number of these topics. Is there somebody that has something that is really on their mind that they'd like to say, an idea they have that they hadn't had an opportunity to cover before we try to do a wrap-up here? Okay. Who you are, what neighborhood, and then go.
My name is...
No.
My name is Hannah. Hello. And I am from Channel Center Street. And I think that what we are missing is more green space, more park for everyone, walkable streets, walkable and bikeable. And we would love to have park big enough to accommodate conservatory and maybe indoor swimming pool, public swimming pool, or anything for people who actually live here. I don't think we need more offices because I'm not sure what the occupancy rate is right now downtown, but it was, I think it was something 30%, but whatever. It doesn't matter. We're trying to convert some offices to living spaces. So that's another, if we have to build anything, it should be definitely much smaller. I'm sure That's what everybody said, and on human scale, and nothing other than housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Oh, I got two hands on the way. Okay.
Hi, I'm Lori from 36A Street. I agree with practically everything that has been said. I just want to say that we don't have rent control in Boston, and this is a very serious issue that we should start talking about to make sure that the city manages to get rent control, especially if most of those apartments are going to be rented only. I also would like to see some of the residential facilities in condominiums to be sold. My son had a very hard time finding a place to live. He moved to the city. We had been in Charlestown for a long time, then we were in Newton, then he went away to college. When I moved here about 15 years ago, he lived with me part-time, lived with other people. He finally found, it took him over a year to find a place to buy because places are just not available. But he's not here, he's in Eastie. So, I would like to see more places available. Starter housing for the next generation. Well, some of you are already in that next generation, but I'm above it. But I think it's really important to have starter housing, plus for those facilities that are rented, there should be rent control. There has to be, because it's just too expensive for people to move in.
Thank you. Thank you. And more, and then I'm coming to the front.
Hi, Rita Carey, I'm on Channel Center Street. As far as the parks, we see this linkage with little green spaces with decorative rocks. I would love to see something, we don't really have anything recreational here, and like maybe have the Curly Center, some kind of inspiration where you can actually, we don't have any tennis courts here. I know pickleball courts are a problem with noise, so probably don't want those. But I think Hannah mentioned a pool, something like that. Let's think big. Let's have an actual recreational center that everybody could use. Old people, young people, middle-aged, everybody, but because we really don't have that here. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Rita. So I'm going to take the opportunity to wrap. Yeah. So, is the next steps, I think, and there's some open-ended ones as well, right? So, but first and foremost, the next public meeting on this project is next week on the 21st. So grab one of these pieces of paper in the back, or use your phone now, scan that QR code, and register to attend that meeting. It's a Zoom meeting, unfortunately not in person. It's from 6 to 8 p.m. on the 21st. The second, that second QR code gives you all of the information on the project, right? All of these, the massing diagrams, all of those things are called out. The specifics about what they've asked for, which is the first poster you saw as you come in, the 260-foot buildings, the 300, the 320-foot buildings, that's what they're asking for, right? Not this shell game of this building could be 180 feet, that one could be this one could be that. That's what they're asking for, and the subsequent blocks are what will or could be built based on that request, right? So all of that detail is in that second link, and that allows you also to sign up for updates as that occurs. And then the third, we've all sat here for the last hour and a half and talked and listened to each other. I just ask you to write down, if you haven't already, some thoughts. You don't have to get this, your letter in. The comment deadline is currently July 31st. I think somebody mentioned earlier, we've kicked this down the road a bit. We're probably going to ask for another extension, so Procter & Gamble, the planning department should probably get ready for that request. But right now, the comment deadline is July 31st. The third QR code will load all of the email addresses for the mayor, for the congressman, for the senator, for the rep, and some key contacts at the planning department. So hopefully that makes it easy for you to submit your letter. Your letter doesn't have to be grand and glorious. It's your thoughts, it's your comments, it's what you think, right? But as we've said continually, you need to stay engaged, you need to provide your input to the city, and the more the merrier, right? If we get 1,000 letters, that's 1,000 voices that they currently do not have and they do not hear. So that's critically important. There's some work to be done about the IAG getting together. Matt, you mentioned it, a bunch of the IAG members have mentioned it, to try to have a working session. Clearly, I think the neighborhood associations have some work to do to continue to support the neighborhood. And Steve mentioned more meetings. Yeah, we're probably going to have 1 or 2 more of these. We haven't figured out get lessons learned out of this and then kind of have this continue on. And I just say thank you for coming out. It's been a long night, hour and a half, especially for the folks in the back. It's really warm in here, which is kind of disappointing, but that's okay. We don't control this room either, right? And I'm going to hand the mic to my colleagues here and see if they have anything to say.
First of all, I can speak on all of us, I believe, and we just say thank you so much, again, for spending this time with us, for sharing your thoughts, for being engaged in your neighborhood together. We're going to make it a better neighborhood. So thank you. And speaking of heat, I just wanted to also do a quick PSA. The mayor has declared a heat emergency for July 16th and through July 18th. And so if you go to boston.gov/heat, you can get some tips, but please stay hydrated, stay cool, check on your neighbors. That's just a quick PSA. And then on behalf of FP&A, if you are interested and you're writing comment letters and you want to include us on your letters, we are fpnaboston@gmail.com. I'm sure you're going to be hearing from us again before the comment deadline. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. So just a quick comment, observation of what we've been hearing tonight. I've read through the 85-page master plan. There's 1,365 pages in the supplemental information, and the whole package is very short on community benefits. And what we're looking for is community benefits in the form of infrastructure. And those are the infrastructures that people have been talking about. Perhaps a bridge across Fort Point Channel, the berm being fortified, things like that. And that's what Gillette needs to step up to provide. So that's just an observation.
Thank you, everybody, for showing up. Get your comments in, copy all the elected officials and your neighborhood association. And back to Steve Hollinger, be aspirational. This is one chance to do a major development. We have lots of money, lots of great things could happen here, so think big.
The only thing I would say is before you leave, make sure you come over here and look at these diagrams. Because you don't have a sense, we talk about 320 feet and 280 feet. Come over here and just look at what they're proposing versus what's there already. And you'll see how incredibly ridiculous it really is. Thank you.
I think Ellie's good. I think we're good. So thank you, everybody, and have a good evening.